Wow, that was an introduction into the time of Meister Eckhart. So welcome to the summer sessions, welcome to the Anthology of Enlightenment, in which masters are invited to share some of their brightness with us. And yeah, it's an incredible adventure to prepare it for myself. It's like I just totally love it. It's so great. So I want to share that with you, what comes to me, and that's a very interesting process. And yeah, so you just never know. And today, Meister Eckhart, I had an encounter with this year spontaneously when I was in Erfurt, where he had a church. I didn't know. I walked in a church, just a regular church to me. I walked in there, and it was the church of Meister Eckhart, where he started his mission, you could say. And that was an encounter. I was there, and I spent time with him. That's how it felt. It was a beautiful encounter. It's like a meeting of friends. So that makes it always so, yeah, he's one of us. You know, it's like this. It's like he's one of us, absolutely. And you will see that today too. You will see it in all kinds of expressions. It will be so familiar. And that's just lovely to celebrate that, or bring back into memory, in fact, allowing that to affect you. And so I used in the preparation one book of him, of his sermons, his expressions, his all kinds of scriptures in there from him, translated from German and Latin, because he was a priest. So he in his time he spoke, or he not spoke, but yeah, well, he recited a lot of Latin words, and his writings were in Latin and in German. So that all was translated into English, lucky us. And so I'm using that. There's a beautiful book that I used, and that is the complete works of Meister Eckhart. And that's a delight to go through and to see. I always loved like, it's not a coincidence, but it's more like there's some main text, that's great too, but there are always little notes, little things that he just wrote down, for instance, or they assume it is his because of his writing. I like those specifically because they don't appear in that many books of him, and give like a very pure expression to what he shares. You can feel him when he shares, you could say. Like, I recognize his voice in it, and that's really lovely. Now, in this church that I was, I shared this before, but in this church that I was, there was also like a huge organ, and many of the organists that have been playing in that specific church was, for instance, the family of Bach and Pachelbel and so on. So it's like, that's interesting. But I was thinking about, have they met? Well, no, they did not meet, because I will show you later. Like the Eckhart lived in a different time than Bach himself, or like Johannes Sebastian Bach, or his sons, or yeah. So they lived in a different time. You will see that in a moment. I'm giving you an overview of where he's from and what happened, and that's interesting. But before we do that, I like to stand still with a beautiful poem that was also in this book, and that inspired me to make some music, and also to bring this into expression in a way that is kind of refreshing to me. It's like I love it to see that happen. So I want to expose you to that, and we start with that as a meditation. So there's first English, there's a break, like we have a silence of 2.5, 3 minutes, I don't know exactly. Then Michel will recite it in French too. And then we can do that one more time, maybe, or maybe, I don't know how it's gonna go, we'll see. So these things are always in the moment for me. The grain of mustard seed. When all began beyond mine span, the word I is, oh what bliss. When source at first gave birth to source, O Father's heart from which did start that same word, yet it's averred, the word still kept in womb performs. From both doth flow a loving glow, in double troth known to both, comes forth from them the Holy Ghost, of equal state inseparate. The three are one, who grasp it none, itself it knows itself the most. The threefold clasp we cannot grasp, the circle span no mind can scan, for here's a mystery phantomless, check and mate, time, form, estate. The wondrous ring holds everything, its central points stand motionless. The peak sublime, deedless climb, if thou art wise, thy way then lies, through desert very strange to see, so deep, so wide, no bounds descried. This desert's bare, of then and there, in modeless singularity. This desert place no foot did pace, no creature mind ingress can find. It is yet truly none knows what. It's here, it's there, it's far, it's near, it's high, it's low, yet all we know is this is not, and that is not. It's clear, it's bright, it's dark as night, no name or sign can it define. Beginningless, of ceasing free, immobile, bare, it's flowing there. Where it's made well, whose can tell? Should teach us what its form may be. As a child become both blind and dumb, thy own self's ought must turn to naught. Both ought and naught thou must reject, without a trace of image, time or space. Go quite astray the pathless way, the desert thou mayst then detect. My soul within, come out, God in. Sink in my ought, in God's own naught. Sink down in bottomless abyss. Should I flee thee, thou wilt come to me. When self is done and thou art one, thou transcendental highest bliss.
Le grain de musgraine de Tarare. Quand tout a commencé, au-delà de l'esprit, la parole, oui. Et oh quel bonheur, quand la source a d'abord donné naissance à la source. Oh le cœur de mon père, d'où est parti ce même mot. Pourtant c'est avéré, la parole est toujours gardée dans le sein maternel, par force. Des deux coule une lueur d'amour. En double promesse, connue des deux, sort le Saint-Esprit. D'état égal, inséparable. Les trois ne font qu'un. Qui le saisit? Aucun. C'est lui-même qui se connaît le mieux. Le triple fermoir, nous ne pouvons pas comprendre. La durée du cercle, aucun esprit ne peut scanner. Car voici un mystère insondable. Vérifié et maté. Le temps, la forme, la succession, la base merveilleuse tient tout. Son point central reste immobile. Le sommet sublime, ascension sans acte, si tu es sage. Ton chemin réside alors à travers le désert très étrange à voir, si profond, si large, aucune limite n'est décrite. Ce désert est nu, dès alors ou là, dans une singularité sans mode. Cet étroit désert, aucun pied n'a marché, pas d'esprit de créature, l'entrée peut trouver. Il est pourtant en réalité, personne ne sait quoi. C'est là, c'est ici, c'est loin, c'est près. Il est haut, il est bas. Pourtant, tout ce que nous savons est. Ce n'est pas le cas et que ce n'est pas. C'est clair, c'est brillant, il fait noir comme la nuit. Pas de nom ni de signe peut-il définir. Sans commencement, sans fin libre, immobile, nu, ça coule là-bas où il peut habiter. Il peut le dire. Devrait-nous apprendre quelle peut être sa forme? En tant qu'enfant devenu, à la fois aveugle et muet, ton propre moi n'est rien, doit se transformer en néant. Je dois rejeter tout et rien, sans laisser de traces, d'image de temps ou d'espace. S'égarer complètement, la voie sans chemin. Le désert, tu pourras alors détecter. Mon âme, à l'intérieur, sort. Dieu entre. Couler. Tout. Dans le néant de Dieu. Couler dans un abîme sans fond. Dois-je te fuir? Tu viendras à moi quand le moi est fini. Alors, tu es gagné. Toi, félicité transcendantale, la plus élevée.
So this is the meditation. So thank you for joining. And so you see the wording, the way that it is being shared, the way that Meister Eckhart is expressing himself is actually familiar. That was the thing that happened to me. It's like it's actually familiar. You could say like most of his expressions seem to be contemporary, which is pretty amazing if you see that. If you would look at time lapses here, it's like 800 years ago. if you want to see it like that. So you see, like, the timelessness in his words are just obvious. And that's why you recognize them. That's why you can read it, actually, and have an experience with it. So that's what I loved about it, and especially with this poem. And so this, Meister Eckhart, let's get started and getting to know some of his details, you could say. Look at his curriculum. That's an interesting thing that we do that, but I like it. Meister Eckhart. So there was a painting of him because they didn't have any cameras at that point. So okay, well then we do a painting. That's great too, great painting. And great to also see some kind of image with it. Not that that's necessary, but still. Eckhart von Hochheim, he's called in German, Eckhart von Hochheim. And so 1262 to 1328. So you see, like, okay, 68. He became 68, and then he passed on. Commonly known as Meister Eckhart, or Eckhart, was a German Catholic theologian, philosopher, and mystic, born near Gotha, Thuringia, in the Holy Roman Empire. And Thüringen, it's now called Thüringen in Germany. Eckhart came into prominence during the Avignon papacy at the time of increased tensions between monastic orders, diocesan clergy, the Franciscan order, and Eckhart's Dominican order. In later life, he was accused of heresy and brought up before the local Franciscan-led Inquisition. And what he taught was that reality has one source. In fact, he was pretty direct with that. So that's equal to everyone. So you can teach this to everyone. There's not like a priesthood that can only receive this. He broke it open in a certain sense. Since the 19th century, he has received renewed attention. He has acquired the status of a great mystic within contemporary popular spirituality, as well as considerable interest from scholars situating him within the medieval scholastic and philosophical tradition. Okay, so, well, that's just a fact, you could say, as far as as that tells you something. So he was an German Catholic theologian, a philosopher, and a mystic. Let's see, how can you become a mystic, you could say? Like, how do people become mystics? You cannot be a mystic, and Joel Goldsmith says this too, it's like you can't be a mystic without having mystical experiences. So in fact, your certainty in that expresses your being a mystic, you could say. Now that's not so interesting to a mystic. It's interesting to the world that thinks in terms of, what's your function? What do you do? I'm a mystic. Oh, hi, I'm a mystic. See, that doesn't make sense. So having had mystical experiences is your best kept secret. In fact, you will not be able to share any of that. You're not really, you can radiate it because you have recognized the light in yourself and in your brother. It's like your illumination is that, like your mind is illumined by the light of God. Your consciousness has been opened. There's something has happened. You have underwent an initiation, you could say, in which light suddenly came into your consciousness, like you had no idea that you could see like this. Now, this is, you could say the definition of a mystic is somebody who is actually having mystical experiences and is actually focused on it too, and actually sees like it too. You start to see with Christ vision, seeing beyond this world, and the relationship of oneness and not anything else. So in fact it is you're aware of God's presence in all things, and that this God's presence is in you as a palpable experience, as a light, guiding light. We come to that later, because I want to say some more about that, which is also interesting. This will tell you really something about how he is looking, his Christ, his Christ vision, you could say, his enlightened vision. Now, what do you see on the picture here? So here's a picture of Meister Eckhart. Here's a picture on the right side. Is a picture of an angel, and one of the angels in his church. I photographed it when I was there, so I glued it on here, you could say. But just that you know, I really thought it's beautiful. So it will come back in one of the expressions too. So he has a real theologian's and purity of mind expression. I cannot say it any other way. It's like he's so incredibly God-centered, and that makes it so incredible to read. God is in all things, as being, as activity, as power. But he is focused in the soul alone. It's like he's fertile. He's fertile in the soul alone. For though every creature is a vestige of God, the soul is the natural image of God. This image must be adorned and perfected in this birth. In the birth of the soul, like in the birth of the mystical I, you could say. This image must be adorned and perfected in this birth. No creature but the soul alone is receptive to this act, this birth. Indeed, such perfection as enters the soul, whether it be divine, undivided light, grace, or bliss, must enter the soul through this birth, and in no other way. Just await this birth within you, and you shall experience all good and comfort, all happiness, all being and all truth. If you miss it, you will miss all good and blessedness. See, this is such a pure and beautiful expression. I'd like, wow, what an incredible delight to share. It's like so great to be inspired by this. God is in all things, as being, as activity, as power, but he is fecund in the soul alone. For though every creature is a vestige of God, the soul is the natural image of God. This image must be adorned and perfected in this birth. No creature, but the soul alone is receptive to this act, this birth. Indeed, such perfection as enters the soul, whether it be divine, undivided light, grace, or bliss, must enter the soul through this birth, and in no other way. Just await this birth within you, and you shall experience all good and comfort, all happiness, all being and all truth. If you miss it, you will miss all good and blessedness. See, I love that. So you can say like he is expressing himself from the center of his own experience. You could say he is expressing what he receives for himself, and he actually shares it in a way that you can feel it when he says it. It's like, oh, that's so beautiful to receive it this way, to let that come to you this way. It's like there's a purity. So there's also a rest that's inherent in his expressions. There's a rest. Like you gotta sit down for a moment and listen to this. It's really like that. It's like, well, take it easy. Just let this come to you. Like breathe this in a little bit, like you would smell a rose, like this. It's like, ah, yes, now I know. Ah, you can experience this on any level. But it's also teaching at the same time. He's telling you where to wait for, where to open yourself up for this receptivity, for this reception, for this acceptance of what is given to you, the light, the undivided light, the bliss, the gratitude, the happiness. It's like to come in this place inside yourself, like the place of the birth of the soul is what he calls it. I wrote a poem about that came to me. I'm going to share that later, but that has also to do with that. So it's really directed towards letting that happen. This birth of the awareness of God's presence, in terms of the soul is the part of you that can communicate directly with God and is one with God, of course. See, that does not happen to the body, you could say. That cannot happen to your thinking mind, but it can happen. It is established in your soul. The soul is capable of perfect communication with God. That's where that takes place. Now that comes into your awareness, into your consciousness, and this is what he's talking about. Here he says another differentiation, or another, make it a little bit more specific. Like, there is a difference between spiritual things and bodily things. Every spiritual thing can dwell in another, but nothing bodily can exist in another. There may be water in the tub, and the tub surrounds it, but where the wood is, there can be no water. In this sense, no material thing dwells in another, but every spiritual thing does dwell in another. So he comes up with a metaphor of the bathtub, like there may be water in the tub, and the tub surrounds it, but where the wood of the tub is, so he had probably a wooden tub, there's no water. In this sense, no material thing dwells in another, but every spiritual thing does dwell in another. So now, to share this differently is like there's ideas can be shared. They can be one. You give them away and don't lose it. You still have the idea. With material things, that is different. When you give it away, it's gone. Now here is too with the spiritual recognition. There's nothing lost by sharing that. If you give a material thing away, you could say, you can in fact never end up in the same place. It is impossible for bodies to unite, in other words. There's no communication going on in bodies. So the communication that is taking place is happening in mind, in mind, recognizing, in recognition, in say coming to the place of recognition of oneness. Two things cannot communicate. It has to be one thing that communicates, otherwise it's not whole. It cannot communicate. It communicates instantaneously altogether, or it does not communicate. That's so great, even about listening to what I'm sharing. It's like if you recognize that there's only one speaking and listening at the same time, then that opens something up. It is not me saying words to you. No, this is in mutual recognition of what connects us, because in fact there is only one of us. And yeah, there's a lot of, I see this in some Facebook groups or whatever, where people are always talking in we, and we do this and we do that, while it's actually missing the point in the recognition of our oneness. Like there's literally only one thing going on. Two things cannot communicate. Now that becomes pretty obvious in Facebook groups. But that on the side. It's like every angel is in the next with all his joy, with all his happiness, and all his beatitude, as perfectly as in himself. And every angel, with all his joy and all his beatitude, is in me, and so is God himself with all his beatitude, though I know it not. Take the lowest angel in his pure nature, the smallest splinter or spark that ever fell from him would suffice to light up the whole world with bliss and joy. Just see how splendid he is in himself. Every single angel is in the next with all his joy, with all his happiness and all his beatitude, as perfectly as in himself. And every angel, with all his joy and all his beatitude, is in me. And so is God himself with all his beatitude, though I know it not. Take the lowest angel in his pure nature, the smallest splinter or spark that ever fell from him would suffice to light up the whole world with bliss and joy. Just see how splendid he is in himself. You see how much inspiration and fun it is, you could say. It's like, how much fun is it to speak from totality? How all-inclusive it becomes, like to speak from that place, from wholeness. It's incredibly inspiring to me to hear this, the way that he articulates all this. It's so lovely. And you see that, this is what I said in the beginning of the anthology, like yesterday was, I think, the first one. I really lost track of time here. But it's like there's this sweet spot in every mystic, in every master, you could say. And that is on a level of certain subtlety that is just totally delightful. It's like it can be bold in its expressions, but when it comes down to the subtleties, into the like the fine line, you could say, of what is and what isn't, then that is a delight to hear it, to read it, and to let this come to you. It's like, look at that, how he's saying this about this angel. Like, if ever the lowest angel would drop one little spark, it would light up the whole world in total bliss and happiness. Like, wow, that is really comforting as an idea. That's so beautiful. Now, he's talking about you, of course. It's like he's talking about you and not anyone else. So that is the all-inclusive part of what you hear in this whole series. It's like it continuously comes back to you. And this is your experience by your recognition. And the only thing that needs to be done, so to speak, is the recognition. You'll start to recognize this in yourself. That is what is occurring. And that is your illumination, you could say. You start to recognize that there's no exception to the love of God, as for one thing. That literally you are everything. It's all inclusive. So as love itself, you include everything. You only recognize yourself, you could say. And that's just totally lovely to see this expressed in this way. Take the lowest angel in his pure nature, the smallest splinter or spark that ever fell from him would suffice to light up the whole world with bliss and joy. Just see how splendid he is in himself. So here's something else. This is all part of it too, of course. So it's like our Lord, I use this, in fact, because many teachers have used this expression. Our Lord says in the Gospel, "My teaching is not mine, but His who sent me." John 7, 1, 6, 16 probably. And so it should be with a good man. My work is not my work. My life is not my life. We saw this many times expressed. And if I am thus, then all the perfection and bliss that St. Peter has and that St. Paul stretched out his head in martyrdom, and all the felicity they gained thereby, this I enjoy as well as they, and I look to enjoy it eternally, as if it had been my own doing. More, all the works that all the saints and all the angels and Mary, God's mother, too, ever did, from this I hope to reap eternal joy, as if I had done it all myself. Now this is the all-inclusive part of, like, my teaching is not mine, but His who sent me. Like, there's an all-inclusiveness in that, but also it's not personal. It's not my personal doing, but it's still done at the same time. Now here's some real wisdom that I would like to go into a little bit deeper. It's like there's a possibility to hear something here that came to me this afternoon when I was just taking a walk, and then suddenly, boom, there it is. It is this because seeing the perfection, for instance, in the preparation for this meeting, I see how perfect that is. Like the task, if you would describe it, of what I was supposed to do, would have been impossible for me to do. I can tell you that for sure. It's like, that's not possible. So this is great, because like, I'm not doing it, obviously. Like, I'm not doing it. I would not be able to do this. I would not be able to find these texts and these, cues. I couldn't never find them in the book. That would be impossible. So what happens is that all is given to me from step 1 to step whatever. It's like all the steps are given to me. And what do it's like, it is not about my doing anymore. And that's not that something is taken away from me. Oh no, absolutely not. No, the thing that happens is this. It's like the discovery that since all is given to me, I only have to admit that I have no idea. I have no idea how to do this, how to prepare this, how to give this away, how to put this together, how this can be presented, or anything like that. Like, by admitting that, I'm suddenly open to receive that. Now this, I can tell you, is instantaneous. That goes so fast that I cannot believe it. I don't have to read all the works of Meister Eckhart to know what he's expressing. No. That is the great thing. And it's in fact, if you really listen to what he says in the previous part that I shared, he actually says that too. So it's like, in recognition of my all-inclusiveness, that I'm being everything, I also know everything. Not that I know that as a personality, but so I have access to all that is. I have access to all knowing. And by that, it can be given to me. By that, it will tell me what to do. It will express itself through me. Now this is really important. So do I need to understand exactly what is being said? He will tell me. Like, he will tell me. Eckhart will tell me. God will tell me. Spirit will tell me. Like that is a continuous flow that literally expresses itself in the moment when I'm expressing it. Then it becomes clear. Then it starts to make sense. I recognize, like I call that recognition, but it's like you recognize what is being shared. You literally receive that instantaneous communication in a moment, on a moment by moment basis. Now this is what's so great. So that's why it's like, it's perfectly all right to do it this way, to see that, no, this is given to me. Oh, here's a note, you should really read this. You should check it like that. You should do this, you should do that. Like in that, it becomes one beautiful, say, congruent expose of what has to be shared in this present moment. It's just totally amazing. And the fun part, or what is so amazing is that all of these steps, all of the ingredients, you could say, not only come together as one. No, this is celebration as one. Like literally every step along the way makes you more excited about what is going on. And that is so great. You know, that's just totally amazing, totally beautiful. Just like the same what happened with Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. That is absolutely the same thing. It's like the inspiration you receive, the way that you can receive this for yourself is all inclusive. And don't exclude yourself from the bliss and happiness that is actually given in the sharing. And that has nothing to do with me. It is just, I'm happy to receive it and give it away. And I don't care about anything else. Like I'm not concerned with any other steps related to it, because it's not my work. I'm not doing the work. So I thought that was really important to know. It's like, otherwise you think like, how can you do this? How is it possible to actually express this in this way? How do you do that? It's like as if you know everything. It's like, yeah, well, it's not me, it's not I, but it is I that knows. So it's the same with having a vision coming to you in a certain way. This vision is not yours, but it's also yours. So that's the beautiful part. That's why I love to use this part of the text as a possibility to share this with you. All right, so we're doing good. Time for some poetry, maybe. So it is amazing that his pure expressions, like the God is expressions of Meister Eckhart, are actually really beautiful, and that comes back in many of the expressions that he gives. But he's not preaching it in that sense. He's not a real preacher. No, he's an inspirator. He expresses himself through the extension of his own inspiration. And that makes an incredible difference. And he could not, say, distinguish between lay people or priests. Like he would express, he had groups of people coming to him, just teaching in his own language to them instead of Latin. And this was not appreciated by the church. And telling them that there's only one source, and it's the source of life in everyone, available for everyone to connect with, that was a bit too early for many of them. Even though it was a continuation of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. But yeah, nevertheless, he was accused of heresy, but he never made it to the verdict. I think the same story was with Pierre Teilhard too, but I'm not sure. It's like he passed on before the verdict was ready. All the bureaucratic procedures were so slow that he had like, okay, whatever, see you later. So that was quite something. All right, so I'm sharing with you the poem Synteresis. Synteresis is the title. It is the place of mystical birth. Synteresis. It is not being used many times. It's a Greek word, but I thought it was great as a title. The place of mystical birth, a poem inspired by the work of Meister Eckhart. Given to me to be given to you. all that the Father has given, He has given to me. I dwell in His holiness, shining in His perfection. He has given me everything, as He has given Himself. He converts me into His being. He loves my soul. God is one in every way, in every respect. No multiplicity is found outside all number, above all number. God is one, does not coincide with anything. In God, no distinction can be discerned or will ever exist. He who sees duality sees not God. God can be found by turning away from the world. The soul will be purified, made ready for the divine embrace into unio mystica, which may be glimpsed as in a dream. The soul is where the Father speaks His word, where this birth takes place, where she is receptive of this act, the very loveliest, the very purest and subtlest that the soul is capable of, the place of mystical birth. Thank you so much. See, this is great. So this is like every possibility of a mystical experience here. You have chosen, like you have decided to, say, for a moment, move away from the world to come into your sanctuary, and say, in fact, being open for an experience of something else. So that's so lovely. That's how that can happen. And you see, everything is helping with that. So what his expressions, the music, a poem, however that comes to you. It's like you tap into a frequency of recognition. And so the one thing that I'd like to do now is to listen for a moment to the book reading. It's like there are instructions 1 to 6. I think we can listen to some of them. I didn't do this with Tilat, but I thought like we do it here now. So I'll share that with you and invite you to listen with me to it. The Complete Mystical Works of Meister Eckhart. The Talks of Instruction. It's part 2 of the Treatises and Other Works. These are the talks of instruction which the Vicar of Thuringia, the Prior of Erfurt, Brother Eckhart, O.P., delivered to certain of his novices, who asked many questions concerning these talks as they sat together in the Calationibus. Of true obedience, 1. Of true obedience. True and perfect obedience is a virtue to crown all virtues, and no work, however great, can be performed and done without this virtue. And however trifling or paltry a work is, it is more useful done in true obedience, whether it is be reading or hearing Mass, praying, contemplation, or whatever you can think of. But take however trifling a task you like, whatever it may be, and it will be made the nobler and better for you by true obedience. Obedience always produces the very best in all things, yet obedience never hinders or misses anything a man does in any way that proceeds from true obedience, for it misses nothing good. Obedience need never be concerned, for it lacks no good. Whenever a man in obedience goes out of his own and gives up what is his, in the same moment God must go in there. For when a man wants nothing for himself, God must want it equally as if for himself. So in all things, that I do not want for myself, God wants for me. Now see, what does he want for me that I do not want for myself? If I abandon self, he must want everything for me that he wants for himself, neither more nor less, and in the same way as he wants for himself. And if God did not want this, then by the truth that God is, God would not be just and would not be God, which is his natural being. In true obedience there should be no trace of I want so and so, or this and that, but a pure going out of your own. And therefore in the best prayer a man can pray, it should not be give me this virtue or that habit, or even Lord give me yourself or eternal life, but Lord give only what you will and do. O Lord, whatever and however you will in every way. This surpasses the former as heaven does the earth. And when such a prayer is uttered, one has prayed well, having gone right out of self into God in true obedience. And as true obedience should have no I want this, so too one should never hear from it I don't want, or for I don't want is an absolute bane of all obedience. As St. Augustine says, the true servant of God does not desire to be told or given what he would like to hear or see, for his first and highest care is to hear what pleases God best. 2. Of the most powerful prayer and highest activity. The most powerful prayer, one well nigh omnipotent to gain all things, and the noblest work of all is that which proceeds from a bare mind. The more bare it is, the more powerful, worthy, useful, praiseworthy, and perfect the prayer and the work. A bare mind can do all things. What is a bare mind? A bare mind is one which is worried by nothing and is tied to nothing, which has not bound its best part to any mode, does not seek its own in anything, that is fully immersed in God's dearest will and gone out of its own. A man can do no work, however paltry, that does not derive power and strength from his source. We should pray so intently as if we would have all members and all powers turned to it. Eyes, ears, mouth, heart, and all the senses, and we should never stop until we find ourselves about to be united with him whom we have in mind and are praying to, that is, God. 3. Of unresigned people who are full of self-will. People say, alas, sir, I wish I stood as well with God as had as much devotion and were as much at peace with God as others are. I wish I were like them. Or that I were so poor, or I can never manage it unless I am there, or do this or that. I must get away from it all, and go and live in a cell or in a cloister. In fact, the reason lies entirely with yourself and with nothing else. It is self-will. Though you may not know it or believe it, restlessness never arises in you except from self-will, whether you realize it or not. Though we may think a man should flee these things and seek those things, places or people or methods or company or deeds, this is not the reason why methods or things hold you back. It is you, yourself, in the things that prevents you, for you have a wrong attitude to things. Therefore start first with yourself and resign yourself. In truth, unless you flee first from yourself, then wherever you flee to, you will find obstacles and restlessness, no matter where it is. If people seek peace in outward things, whether in places or in methods or in people or in deeds or in banishments or in poverty or in humiliation, however great or whatever kind all these may be, this is all in vain and brings them no peace. Those who seek thus seek wrongly. The further they go, the less they find what they are seeking. They are like a man who has taken a wrong turning. The further he goes, the more he goes astray. But what should he do? He should resign himself to begin with, and then he has abandoned all things. In truth, if a man gave up a kingdom or a whole world and did not give up self, he would have nothing given up. But if a man gives up himself, then whatever he keeps, wealth, honor, or whatever it may be, still he has given up everything. One saint comments on St. Peter's words, "See, Lord, we have left everything." And all that he had left was just a net and his boat. This saint says, whoever leaves a little of his own free will, he leaves not that alone, but he leaves all that worldly people can get hold on of. In fact, all that they are able to desire. For he who resigns himself and his own will has left all things as truly as if they were his free possessions and at his absolute disposal. For that which you don't want to desire, you have handed over and resigned to God's sake, for God's sake. That is why our Lord said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," Matthew 5, verse 3. That is, in will. And none should doubt this. For if there were any better way, our Lord would have declared it. Just as he said, "If any one would follow me, he must first deny himself." Matthew 16:24. It all depends on that. Observe yourself, and wherever you find yourself, leave yourself. That's the very best way. Yeah, oh, that's so great. So this is how you can actually see it as contemporary. You know, it's very contemporary. Of course, somebody translated it into, say, this time's language, English. So that makes it doable too, of course. But at the same time, his instruction is very clear. Now, say true obedience is one word that you heard. True obedience and bare mind. That's really, say, these expressions are really lovely. In fact, you see this back in all our teachings that we encounter. It's like the true obedience is, in fact, give up, let God. Like, no, it's not your will, it's the will of God coming to you, and you join with that will because it is your will. There are not two separate wills. So in that sense, it is true obedience to the will of God that has been said as a sacrifice, but of course that isn't. There is only one will, and that's the will of God. If you think there's another will, you find yourself in conflict. Now, you can do that as long as you want. That's your free will. So it makes sense, doesn't it? So the bare mind I really love too. It's like this is what I try to express in receiving this or preparing this. Like, my mind is bare. I have no idea. I would literally not know what to share with you. And in the same time, it works perfectly. Everything is given. I don't have to read the whole book, or I don't have to do all these things. I can do that. If I'm inspired to do that, I will do that. But it's not necessary right now for this, what I present to you. Now that is so beautiful. It's like it's always in the moment, just perfect, and that's it. And that's the energy that's given right now. So I thought it was really lovely. All right, so thank you so much for joining today in this summer sessions and the Anthology of Enlightenment with our special guest, Meister Eckhart von Thüringen. And so that was really lovely to have him over. I was just considering, so he's kind of a quiet guy sitting here. He's not too, yeah, he's very, say, inclusive. He's not that noisy at all. So I was considering other masters that will come, and especially also the Eastern masters. Remembering Nisargadatta, if he comes over, he might still smoke his bidis. I don't know. So it's always different, isn't it? And Meister Eckhart and of course Pierre Tillard de Chardin was also very quiet. He makes some notes during the talk yesterday. And so the next meeting that we have, we will encounter Joel Goldsmith. That will be tomorrow. So we go through Joel as we go through Meister Eckhart. So that's really nice too. I always love to have Joel over. He's great too. Now there were also knocking on my door this afternoon, knocking on my door some Middle East masters that said, "Hey, don't you forget someone? Why don't you include us in?" And I opened the door and said, "Well, come on in." So suddenly the room was filled with 7 extra masters that will come to share their brilliance with us. And that will be in August, in week 33, 34. Say that takes another 4 weeks or so. But there will be 7 masters from the Middle East. Like Sadi, like Zarathustra, like Rumi, Hafiz, you name it, like many more. And there will be very specific expression of those Middle East masters, because you don't hear about them probably every day. And yeah, this is just beautiful inspiration, I can tell you. So I'm looking forward to that too, and see how that will come to us in the moments that we come together. But that's like an eon from now. So, but I had to mention it today. That's why I sent you some information about it too. All right, thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Of course, I'm playing some music here in the meeting. Thank you so much.